Continuing our reading of Athanasius Kircher's Egyptian Chronology, this is part 2. Dynastia Thebaeorum, quod fuit regnum Deorum, estque Dynastia sestecima juxta Menetonem et Africanum. Post mortem itaque Misraemi Thebaeorum Dynastia, seu decima sexta potestas apud Aegyptios incepit. Incidit vero huius dynastiae principium in vigesimum secundum annum regnantis apud Assyrios nini, teste Eusebio, et in vigesimum tertium Aegyalei, Siconiis tunc in Graecia imperantibus. Duravitque centum et nonaginti annos. Incidit haec dynastia in ultima tempora Abrachae. Qui poro fuerit hi Thebai difficile est asserrere, cum Deis vix ulla supersint in historicorum monumentis vestigia, quantum tamen ex varia autorum collatione comprehendere liquid, fuit hoc celebre illud, et famosum saeculum, quod Deos in Aegypto regnase memorand Aegypti. Erant enim hi filiit nepotes et tribus Noemi filis relicti, potissimum chami progenies cum ingentem rerum cognitionem, de Deo de angelis daemonibus, de mundo eiusque constitutione, de naturae mysteriis, de lapidum, herbarum, atque animalium virtutibus et proprietatibus. A primis patribus continuam traditione ad se deductam participasit. Ac proinde harum cognitionem subsidio freti, cum plurium rerum humano usui necessariarum praestitissent inventiones. Eam sibi apud imperitam plebem existimationem pepererunt, ut eos veluti divinae naturae particeps crederent, ac sancte venerantur. Cum vero pravis artibus ad daemone maligno per cavum in mundum introductis prae coitaris vacarent, ad prae conceptam iam in annis hominum de operibus eorum ompedionem magisque amplificandam, incantationibus suis, magicisque praestigiis, ea praestabant, quae ab hominibus nequaquam fieri posse viderentur. Atque hi sunt famosi a saeculo viri, aquibus veluti ex equo quodam Traiano omnis in omnem terram emanavit superstitio, ac I licitarum artium professio, et quiquam fabularum umquam aut Aegyptus aut Graecia excogitavit, ab his originem traxisse videtur. Atque hi sunt isti diis eo eroes, quos teste Diodoro Paulo minus decem et octo millibus annorum in Aegypto regnasse, derarumque postre meum horum isidis filium regno potitum fabulantur sacerdotes. Sunt autem Coelus, Saturnus, Jupiter, Isis, Typhon, Hercules, Mercurius, Osiris, Horus quibus ordine correspondent, Noemus, Camus, Misraemus, et uxor eius reia, Nimrod, Ninus, aliique ex stirpe chami profati, quorum nomina vetus date temporum ignota manserunt. Okay, so this is the Theban Dynasty, which was the kingdom of the gods, which is placed next to the 16th dynasty of Manetho and Africanus. After the death of Misraim, therefore, the Theban or 16th dynasty began among the Egyptians, and the beginning of this fell on the 22nd year of the reign of Ninus over the Assyrians, according to Eusebius, and on the 23rd year of the reign of Aegyales, the Siconians, at that time ruling in Greece, and it lasted for 190 years. This dynasty, therefore, occurred on the very last days of Abraham. But who else these Thebans were is difficult to assert, since scarcely any traces of them survive in the monuments of historians. However, as far as is possible to understand from the various collations of authors, this was that celebrated and famous age in which the Egyptians remember that the gods reigned in Egypt. For these were the sons and grandsons of the three offspring of Noah, especially the descendants of Ham, who had participated in the vast knowledge of things, about God, about angels, demons, the world and its constitution, about the mysteries of nature, about the virtues and properties of stones, herbs, and animals, which had been handed down to them by continuous tradition from their forefathers. And therefore, relying on the support of this knowledge, since they had made many discoveries necessary for human use, they earned for themselves such an esteem among the ignorant people, who believed them to be partakers of the divine nature, and so venerated them with reverence. But since they were more free than others to engage in the dark arts introduced into the world through Ham, in order to further and more widely enlarge the preconceived notions already in the minds of men about their works, they performed, with their magical incantations and tricks, things that seemed impossible to be done by mortals. And these are the men famous from this age, from whom, as from a certain Trojan horse, all superstition and the profession of illicit arts are emanated throughout the whole world, and whatever fables either Egypt or Greece ever invented seems to have taken their origin from them. These are the gods or heroes, whom, according to Diodorus, the priests fable that reigned in Egypt for little less than 18,000 years, and the last of these gods, the son of Isis, obtained the kingdom. Now they are called Coelus, or Uranus, Saturn, Jupiter, Isis, Typhon, Hercules, Mercury, Osiris, Horus, to which correspond, in their same order, Noah, Ham, Misraim, and his wife Rhea, Nimrod, Ninus, and the others from the stock of the famous Ham, whose names remain unknown owing to the antiquity of time. Nunc septionem Hermes Mercurius seu Faunus, Picci-Jovis filius, Aegyptus Dynasta duo. Misraimo in imperio succesit Mercurius seu Faunus Picci-Jovis filius, e stirpicami prognatus, uti memorat chronicon Alexandrinum, cuius inauguratio contigit, eam quae sequitur ratione. Extincto, inquit chronicon, Pico seu Jove, regnum Italiae filius eius Faunus, e Ianigenum prosapia, qui et Mercurius dicebatur annos trigintiquinque administravit, vir sagax, calidusque et mathematicus, qui primus auri metallum in occidente reperit, eiusque conflanderationem. Sed cum intellexisset, se magna apud fratres suos e Jove patre, de variis pellicibus, quas habuit picus Jupiter prognatos, invidiam flagrare, eus enim occidente confilium coeperant, convasio ingente auri pondere Italia excessit, atquin Aegyptum se contolit ad stirpem a cabo Noemi filio patro suo oriundum, aqua per horonifice exceptus est, qui dum ibi ageret, prae se contempsit omnes, aurehumque amiculum indutus, pilosovabatur apud Aegyptios, quibus multa praedicebat e ventura, natura enim erat peregriniosus, Aegyptii deo oracula et responsa de futuris, veluti inter nucius referret, eurumque subministraveret, quem opum largitorum appellebant, eurehumque deum vocabant. Mercurio itaque in Aegyptum veniente aet chronicon. Regnabat, inquit Mercurio in Aegyptum veniente, quidam ex chami genera apud Aegyptios mesrem nomine, seo quod idem ist Misraim, qui fatis functo Aegypti Mercurium regem suffecerunt, qui annos tridigenti octos superbe ad motum regnavit. Et hunc aiunt variarum rerum inventorum extitisse, verba in ordinem redegisse, et multa indedisse rebus nomina. Fuisse literatum quoque repetorum instituitisseque, quo honore aut quibus sacris quique dii colerentur, astrorum quoque motus et anni partiendi rationem invenisse, quam ob causam summo in honore apud Osiridem seu Misraemum habitum, isidisque seu reiae uxoris Misraemi consiliarum in absentia marite fuisse, tradit Diodorus Siculus. Hermes Mercury, or Faunus, the son of Jupiter Picus, the second Egyptian dynastic king. Misraim was succeeded in the empire by Mercury, or Faunus, son of Jupiter Picus, born of the stock of Cham, as the Alexandrian chronicle records, whose inauguration took place for the following reason. With Picus-Jupiter having died, states the Chronicon, his son Faunus, of the Janian lineage, who was also called Mercury, administered the kingdom of Italy for 35 years. He was a shrewd, cunning man, and a mathematician, who was the first to discover the metal of gold in the West, and the method of smelting it. But when he perceived that he was greatly envied by his brothers, who were descended from his father Jupiter, for the various skins that Picus-Jupiter had worn, for they had conspired to kill his other children in the West, he left Italy with a huge sum of gold, and took himself to Egypt, to the lineage that had descended from Cham, the son of his uncle Noah, by whom he was most honorably received. And while he lived there, he disdained everyone in his presence, and wearing a golden cloak, he philosophized among the Egyptians, to whom he correctly predicted many events, for he was naturally quite ingenious. The Egyptians therefore worshipped him, proclaimed him to be the god Mercury, as one who foretold future events, and who, like a messenger, brought them oracles and answers about the future from God, and who supplied them with gold, which they called the giver of wealth, or the golden god. And in this way the Chronicon relates the coming of Mercury to Egypt. When Mercury came to Egypt, there was ruling among the Egyptians a certain man of the race of Cham named Misraim, who is the same as Misraim, after whose death the Egyptians made Mercury their king, who reigned for 38 years very proudly. And they say that he was the inventor of various things, that he reduced concepts into words and gave many names to things, that he invented literature, that he established by which honors or by what rights each god should be worshipped, and also to have uncovered the movements of the stars, and a method of dividing the year, for which reason he was held in the highest honors, as among Osiris or Misraim, and that he was the counselor of Isis or Rhea, Misraim's wife, in the absence of her husband, as reports Diodorus Siculus. Nunc Vulcanus, Aegypti Dynastia tria. Chronicon Alexandrinum in Mercurii locum substituit Vulcanum, qui divino quodam carmine seu precatione opifix ingenium et fabrile equelu, ut e ferro arma fabricari posset impetravit, cum enim arbor ictu fulminis in montibus conflagrasset, ea ex re, uti Diodorus memorat, Vulcanum maxime delectatum, deficiendi itaque igni novem subministratasse materiam, atque eum modo continuato igne ad eius aspectum coeterus homines convocasse, tamquam asse reperti ignis conservandi usum. Ignis igitur coelitus collato dono fretus, armorum fabricatione victus parandi, rationem ostendit, virtutemque bellicam et victoriam, salutamque comprandi. Ante ipsum quipe clavis tantum saxis pugnabant, ob quod inter deos relatus immortalitatem meruit, sed de hoc plura apud Deorum. And now we come to Vulcan, the third Egyptian dynast. The Alexandrian Chronicle places Vulcan next in the line after Mercury. He obtained from heaven, by a certain divine incantation or prayer, an artisan's talent and a smith's skill, so that weapons could be forged of iron. For, as Diodorus relates, when he witnessed that a tree in the mountains had been struck by lightning, Vulcan was greatly inspired by this event, and so supplied new material for the failing fire, and in this way, continuing the fire, he summoned the rest of the men to behold it, as if he had discovered the use of preserving fire. Therefore, relying on this gift bestowed by heaven, fire showed the method of preparing victuals by the manufacture of weapons, and the martial prowess and victory and safety. For before this time mortals fought only with crude nails and stones, for which reason, being reckoned among the gods, he himself earned immortality. But more on this in Diodorus. Sol, Aegypti Dynasta quarta. Porro chronicon fatis functo Vulcano, interque deos relato, solem, filium eius substituit. Vixit autem die septem et septuaginta supra quater millenos quadrigentos, quos annos conficiunt duodecima, tres menses, dies quatur. Nam Aegyptii aliam tum temporis computandi rationem ignorabant, omnium enim unius diei orbita definiebant. Duodenem vero mensium numerum tum demum descripserunt, cum vulgo mortales regibus vectales haberi coiperunt. Sol, autem vocani filius, quem alii cum horro quoque confundunt. Rex eximius erat, philosophus et summus justitiae cultor. Foeminam enim in adulterio deprehensam per totum Aegyptum duci iusit, gravi terquin illam animad verterit, unde in Aegypto coeteri castius vivere dicerunt, moeco etiam morte multato. Quare magnam ab Aegyptiis iniet gratiam, de quo Homerus sub fabulae tegumento loquitur, cum dicit, Venerem cum Marte noctu cubantem a sole fuisse proditam. Dequo multis palae fatus. Post solem hunc chronicon recenset alios reges, et primo quidem Sosin, ut ego puto Sosin aut Sochin. Post Sothin Osidin, post Osidin Horum, post Horum Tulen, quendam, quem pro rege, qui tues ab Eusebio, Thonis ab Herodoto vocatur, sumpsise videtur, de quo nos inferius. Sed in tanta nominum corruptione, atque aequivocorum varietate, aliquid certe statuere pro justificile est. Praesertim cum quae priore loco chronicon ponit, ultimo rencenseat Diodorus, nam postquam deos Aegyptiorum coelestes, quos omnem terram per agere dicit, hominibus apperantes, nunc in sacrorum animalium formis, nunc in hominum aut aliorum specie apparentes recensuit, alios ex his genitos, qui fuerint mortales, sapientiam vero, et in humanum genus beneficiis immortalitate potios recensit. Horum quostam in Aegypto regnasse, partimque eo fuisse nomine, quod dii coelestes, partem proprio vocitatos, solem, Saturnum, reiam, Jovem quoque anno nullis ammonia vocatum, iononem praeterea, Vulcanum, vestam, ultimo Mercurium, primum quidem regem fuisse apud Aegyptios solem, eo nomine, quo et coeleste astrum. Quidam, inquit sacerdotes primum Vulcanum regnasse aiunt, inventorum ignis, eoque beneficio ab Aegyptiis ducem constitutum. Deinceps Saturnum, qui sororum reiam aceperit uxorem, aiunt extitisse, genuiseque Osiridem et Isidem. Plures genuisse Jovem et Junonem tradunt, qui ob virtutem universo orbi imperarint. Quae omnia si ordinem excipias, Aegypti regibus, de quibus cucusque dictum est, non incongrue adaptare possunt, adio quidam, ut solis seu coeli nomine noemum intelligas, quem Berosus appellatum dicit. Ullibamma et arsa hoc est coelum et solem, chaos semen mundi, patremque maiorum et minorum Deorum. Anima mundi moventem coelus, et mixta Deum pacis, justitiae, sanctiomoniae, expellentem noxia et custodientem bona. Quibus titulis Osiris, quoque ornatos legitur apud Deorum et alios. Per uxorum autem Noemi intelligas reiam, quam dictus Berosus Tideam, seu melius Tethyn, et aretiam matrem omnium terram vocat, cum qua coelum aut sol id est novae congrediens rerum generationem praestet. Unde fabula de Osiride aut Iside, per Saturnus autem Shem, Cham et Japhet intelligas, quorum Cham ob libdinem in arietam mutatus, Chamum vocatus est, et Saturnus Aegyptius, cumque impudentibus Noemi parentis pudenda, ut supradiximus tractaset, certe occasionem dedit, quam Saturnum coeli virilia falce resequisse finx erunt antiqui. An non impetuosum violentum et perduele ingenium nembrodi, atque ob caliditatem maximam, quam in occupando regno erga fratres suos usus est, Typhonem nobis ob oculos ponit contra Osiridem decertantem. Certe si Aegyptius et Graecis copiosam fabulandi materiam praebuisse, sed de his uberius in syntagmate duo tractabitur, quare modo ad alia. And now Sol, son of Vulcan, the fourth Egyptian dynast. Furthermore, the Chronicon, after the death of Vulcan and his return to the gods, replaced him with his son, Sol. He ruled for 4,477 days, which equals the span of 12 years, 3 months, and 4 days. For at that time the Egyptians did not have any other way of calculating time, but they defined all periods in term of a day's orbit, and only began dividing the year by 12 months, when mortals then later began paying taxes to their kings. And so Sol was the son of Vulcan, whom some also confuse with Horus, and he was an excellent king, a philosopher, and a supreme cultivator of justice. For he also ordered a woman caught in adultery to be led throughout all of Egypt, and severely rebuked, so that other Egyptians might learn to live more chastely, even punishing repeated adulterers with death. For this reason he gained great favor with the Egyptians, of which Homer speaks under the cover of a fable, when he says that Venus, lying with Mars at night, was betrayed by the sun, of whom Palaephatus also writes very much. And after this Sol, the Chronicon lists other kings, the first of them being Sosin, as I think this was Sothin or Sochin. After Sothin, Osiris. After Osiris, Horus. And after Horus, a certain Thule, whom it seems to have taken for a king, who is called Thuoes by Eusebius, or Thonis by Herodotus, about whom we shall speak below. But among such a corruption of names and a variety of equivocations, it is quite difficult to establish anything certain, especially since Diodorus lists last those which the Chronicon places first, and he has listed the celestial gods of the Egyptians, whom he says roams the whole world, appearing to men, sometimes in the form of sacred animals, and sometimes in the form of mortals or others. He lists others born of them, who were mortal, but possessed wisdom and immortality in the benefits to the human race. And some of these ruled in Egypt, and were called partly by their own names, and partly by the names of the heavenly gods, the Sun, Saturn, Rhea, Jupiter, also known as Ammon by some, Juno as well, Vulcan, Vesta, and lastly Mercury. The first king among the Egyptians was indeed Sol, by the name of which the celestial star was also called. But some priests, he says, say that Vulcan reigned first, the inventor of fire, and was appointed the leader of the Egyptians for that benefit. Then Saturn, who took his sister Rhea as his wife, they say, came into being, and fathered Osiris and Isis. Many say that he fathered Jupiter and Juno, who ruled the whole globe of the earth by virtue of their power. But all of which, if you take their order into account, cannot be inappropriately applied to the kings of Egypt, of whom we have spoken thus far. So much so, indeed, that you might interpret Noah by the name of the sun, or heaven, whom Berosus says was called Olibama and Arsa, that is, heaven and the sun, Chaos as the seed of the world, and the father of the greater and lesser gods, the soul of the world, moving the heavens and their mixtures, the god of peace, justice, holiness, expelling the harmful things, and preserving the good. With such titles, Osiris is also interpreted as adorned in Diodorus and others. Likewise, the wife of Noah you might interpret to be Rhea, whom Berosus calls Tidea, or better yet, Tethys, and Aretia, the mother of all the earth, with whom the heaven, or the sun, that is, Noah, consorting, performs the generation of things. Whence came the fable of Osiris and Isis? But by Saturn you might interpret Shem, Ham, and Japheth, of whom Ham, being changed into a ram for his lust, was called Hammon, and Saturn the Egyptian. And since, as we have said above, he had treated the shameless parts of his parent Noah, he certainly gave occasion, which the ancients imagined Saturn to have cut off the manly parts of heaven with a sickle. Does this not show us the impetuous, violent, and treacherous nature of Nimrod, and the extreme heat which he used in seizing the kingdom towards his brothers, Typhon competing with Osiris? Certainly, if we compare the deeds of the heroes of this age well with the histories of the Egyptians, we shall find that they alone furnished the Egyptians and the Greeks with copious material for their fables. But these things will be treated more fully in Syntagma 2, wherefore we will now turn to the others.